Spoilers for both the base game and DLCs ahead. Final Fantasy XV is a game that I'm completely baffled by my continuing fascination with. There are very few things in it that I enjoy, whether it be the combat, that's simple enough to be rendered borderline unplayable, the narrative, a cobbled-together disaster attempting to string together characters, environments, and events from 3 separate games that didn't even share a common name, or the characters, who were genuinely well done, if you only count the main 4. Otherwise, you're shown characters who have entirely off-screen arcs, who face tragic deaths that happen off-screen, and you're expected to care. Every aspect of 15 winds up reaffirming one through line. Nothing in this game feels complete, nothing in this game feels cohesive, and everything in this game needed somebody to step in, tell the people working to stop programming it so that Ignis's glasses accurately distort the world like real glasses, and instead make sure that enemies actually telegraph their attacks and let you dodge them in time. Episode Ardyn is the unexpected finale of this nascent media empire, the former face of a second season of DLC dedicated to improving 15's tattered reputation turned into the last thing we'll ever see in the game itself. There's a book coming out that I probably won't read. This DLC attempts to tell the sad tale of Ardyn, making his actions justified and to show who really ran the show in the world of EOS. It attempts to bring the gameplay back to where it all began after a surprising amount of experimentation in the other DLC, with him playing essentially like Noctis with a modified dodging finishing move. What this DLC does not even try to be is a remotely satisfactory conclusion for this game. It raises dozens of questions, alludes to much larger goings-on, and very, very clearly sets up more of the alternate timeline fuckery that was in episode Ignis. The first third was my personal favorite part, as it was entirely them info-dumping lore that you already knew, while establishing characters already introduced, while still managing to raise plenty of questions. The cutscenes are absolutely absurd, with what I believe is a fisheye effect during several close-ups on Ardyn's face that make it incredibly uncanny, and a dinner scene where Verstale spends half his monologuing staring into space, and there's a dolly zoom that only lasts a second on an uninteresting background that doesn't really fit the tone of the scene at all. I was consistently laughing, whether it be at the aforementioned cinematography, the incredibly hammy voice acting from all involved, or the simple absurdity of a Force ghost that only appears in order to be smug. Steve Blum does not fit young Verstale at all, and his physical appearance and voice raise a multitude of questions regarding Prompto, who's apparently a clone of his. Unfortunately, the time you spend here is far too short, and you're quickly whisked back to a destroyed Insomnia, where you teleport around poorly modeled Shibuya streets and kill one of 4 enemy types, destroy towers, and buy hats, all to a Lotus Juice track played on loop. I spent an hour in this map, only unlocked 4 or 5 towers, and had already grown tired of it by the end. Despite being the longest part of the DLC, I can say very little about it. It's not incredibly interesting. Additionally, I had pretty bad performance issues during my second session here, and I'm not really sure why when it ran fine beforehand. The finale falls flat by virtue of how incredibly uninteresting the combat systems are. Somnus is even worse than Regis in this regard, with his fight finally making me understand how somebody could find jump canceling a boss in Devil May Cry boring. It only took me 6 minutes to beat Somnus, but fuck did those 6 minutes drag on. The ending is simply baffling. Sure, I'll take Bahamut did it as a twist. It's really funny that they didn't say it into the 5th DLC, but sure. The second season of DLC was clearly angling to tell the story of another way 15 could have ended, and this was setting the stage for a tale of rebelling against the Pantheon to defy fate. The problem is that, well, the second season will never happen. This is the end of 15 as a franchise as far as I'm concerned, and an ending like this is really bad. A barrage of questions builds and builds the more I think about this DLC and its relation to the game. So like, what was going on with that thing where Ardyn was impersonating the guard? Was he always looking like the guard and just looked like Ardyn for the viewer's convenience? Was he switching between the two, like Jester and Arca and then Devil May Cry 3? If it was the former, why did they show him switching in the video feed? If it was the latter, why did nobody go, hey, that's the Chancellor? Why did Ardyn, when told what his fate was, decide to abandon it by doing what he was told to do? Why did nobody tell Noctis about the dude who had royal blood who nearly killed his father and destroyed the city 30 years ago? Why did nobody know that was the Imperial Chancellor? If it was 30 years ago, doesn't that imply that Insomnia was locked into a medieval stasis minus the invention of smartphones? Why does the person Prompto is a clone of sound like Steve Blum instead of Prompto? Wasn't Prompto fat before Noctis inspired him to shape up? Wouldn't that make Steve Blum Prompto fat instead of a twink like he is? Did they ever actually say Verstale's first name? I couldn't find it looking it up. Why? What's wrong with Ardyn's walk cycle? Why did they do a dolly zoom but only for half a second at random? Why does Lunafreya exist? What the fuck was that DLC gonna play like? What did destroying the wall actually achieve? Why did the Empire not annex Insomnia on the spot with the king nearing death, a devastated guard, and no defenses? Why did Verstale want to stop Ardyn from attacking the king when he had the chance? What was the point of this assault? They had Imperial troops elsewhere off screen, what were they doing? If it's because Bahamut wouldn't allow it, why wasn't this ever brought up? Why did they make a full-on multiplayer game with its own gameplay, netcode, and quest before finishing the story they apparently wanted to tell? What's going to happen to Luminous now? What's happening to the Luminous engine? Where are Talcott and Jared the key to all all of this? When will I learn? Don't buy this DLC unless you have the brainworms that I do. It's not worth the $10 it's asking for if you aren't a masochist who derives just as much entertainment from disappointment as you do actual fun, and considering how much of the game already feels like them frantically stitching together what could have been into something that's remotely presentable, I cannot find a more fitting fate for this game to go out on. A return to basics, where the unfinished game is propped up by outside media that fills in gaps introduced by lacking development time on the main product. I'm Batchan, and we're done here.